global aviation, some aircraft become legends, and few aircraft have reached legendary status like the Boeing 747. Known as the Queen of the Skies, the 747 changed air travel forever. It made long-haul international travel more accessible, carried millions of passengers across continents, and became one of the most iconic aircraft ever built. But here's the surprising part. While much of the world is retiring the Boeing 747, Russia is doing something very different. Instead of saying goodbye to the jumbo jet, Russia is bringing it back. And that decision has shocked aviation experts around the world. This is the story of what Russia just did with the Boeing 747, and why it matters far more than most people realize. At first, the headline sounds dramatic. Russia brings back the Boeing 747. It sounds like a comeback story. But the reality is more practical, and much more important. This is not about nostalgia. This is not about rebuilding a luxury passenger fleet. And it is definitely not about buying new 747s. It is about survival. Russia's aviation industry has been under serious pressure due to sanctions, limited access to Western aircraft parts, restricted leasing markets, and delays in domestic aircraft production. For years, Russian airlines relied heavily on foreign-made aircraft from Boeing and Airbus. According to reports, around 67% of the active fleet remained foreign-made as of late 2025. That dependence created a major problem. When access to new aircraft and certified spare parts became more difficult, airlines had to make a hard choice: wait for new domestic aircraft or bring old aircraft back to life. And that is exactly where the Boeing 747 re-entered the picture. The airline at the center of this story is Rossiya Airlines, part of the Aeroflot Group. Rossiya inherited several Boeing 747-400 aircraft from the former Russian airline Transaero after its collapse years ago. Many of these aircraft were later parked or placed into long-term storage, especially during the pandemic, when demand for air travel dropped sharply. Most people assumed those aircraft would never return. But by 2025 and early 2026, that changed. Reports indicate that 2 Boeing 747s were already back in commercial operation. A third 24-year-old aircraft was restored in late 2025, and plans were discussed for a 4th aircraft to return to service by 2027. That surprised many people, because globally, passenger Boeing 747s are disappearing. Most airlines prefer newer twin-engine aircraft like the Boeing 787 Dreamliner or the Airbus A350. Why? Because they are far more fuel efficient. The 747 is powerful, but it is also expensive to operate. 4 engines mean higher fuel costs, more maintenance, and less economic efficiency compared to modern long-range twins. In normal market conditions, airlines move away from the 747. But Russia is not operating under normal conditions, and that changes everything. When new aircraft are difficult to acquire, the question becomes simple: what can fly right now? That is where the Boeing 747 still has incredible value, especially for long-haul and high-capacity domestic routes. The 747 can carry huge numbers of passengers or massive cargo loads. Airports already understand how to handle it. Maintenance teams have experience with it. Ground equipment already exists. In a crisis, availability becomes more important than optimization, and the 747 becomes useful again. This is not just happening in passenger aviation. Cargo operations matter even more. Russia also added Boeing 747-400 ERF freighters to support logistics operations. Reports show that Aeroflot Group confirmed the addition of used freighter aircraft, including 747-400 ERFs, to subsidiary Rossiya. That is a major signal, because freight aviation depends on payload power, and very few aircraft can match the raw lifting capability of a Boeing 747 freighter. Even today, in global cargo aviation, the 747 remains one of the most respected heavy-lift aircraft in the world. This means Russia's decision is not emotional, it is strategic. Instead of chasing unavailable replacements, they are maximizing proven assets they already control. That is smart aviation management. But there is another layer to this story. Russia is also trying to accelerate domestic aircraft programs like the Ilyushin IL-114-300, the Yakovlev MC-21, and the Sukhoi Superjet 100. However, building aircraft at scale takes time. Even official aviation leaders have admitted that certification and production schedules remain challenging. That means the Boeing 747 is acting as a bridge. It helps airlines survive now while future domestic fleets are still being prepared. This is what shocked the aviation industry. Not that the 747 still exists, but that one of the world's largest countries sees it as a necessary operational solution in 2026. That says a lot about how serious the fleet challenge has become, and it also says something important about the aircraft itself. People often think older aircraft are automatically obsolete. That is not always true. Some aircraft are built so well that they remain useful decades later if the mission fits. The Boeing 747 is one of those aircraft. Its economics may be difficult, but its capability is still unmatched in specific roles. That is why it refuses to disappear. Even Boeing itself stopped 747 production, but the aircraft continues flying across the world, especially in cargo operations. Legends do not retire easily. Now let's talk about what this means for Boeing. At first, it might sound like good news. Russia is flying Boeing aircraft again, but the reality is more complicated. These are not new Boeing sales. These are old aircraft being reused because alternatives are limited. There is no new export victory here. Instead, it reflects how global fleet management changes under pressure. It also highlights how difficult aircraft replacement becomes when supply chains break. For Boeing, the lesson is powerful. Aircraft programs do not end when production stops. The ecosystem continues for decades. Support, maintenance, spare parts, operator knowledge, these matter as much as the aircraft itself. That is why the 747 still matters. And it is also why airlines think differently than headlines suggest. People online often focus only on new aircraft, new engines, new technology. But airlines think about utility. Can it fly? Can it make money? Can it solve today's problem? If the answer is yes, age matters less. That is exactly why Russia's Boeing 747 decision matters. It reveals something deeper about aviation. In times of pressure, practicality beats prestige. A four-engine giant that many considered outdated suddenly becomes one of the most valuable tools available. That is a lesson every airline understands. Of course, there are limits. The Boeing 747 is not the long-term future of Russian passenger aviation. Fuel costs remain high, maintenance becomes harder with age, and eventually newer domestic or international replacements will be necessary. No one expects the 747 to dominate for another 30 years, but that is not the point. Its job is not to be the future. Its job is to protect the present, and right now, that role is incredibly important. This is why aviation experts are paying attention. Because Russia's 747 decision is not just about one aircraft. It is about what happens when a major aviation market is forced to rethink everything. Fleet strategy changes, priorities change, old aircraft become new solutions. That is rare, and rare decisions create major headlines. So when people ask, "You won't believe what Russia just did with Boeing 747, the answer is actually very simple. They brought it back. Not because it is the best aircraft in the world today, but because under current conditions, it may be one of the most useful, and usefulness wins, every single time. Now the real question is this: can Russia successfully maintain these aging Boeing 747 fleets while waiting for domestic aircraft production to catch up? Or will the pressure of maintenance and modernization become too heavy to manage? That answer will shape the next chapter of Russian aviation. But one thing is already clear: the Boeing 747 is not finished. Not yet. And in Russia, the Queen of the Skies has found one more reason to fly. If you enjoyed this deep and informative aviation breakdown, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think bringing back the Boeing 747 is a smart move, or should Russia focus only on new aircraft? And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful aviation documentaries and research-based stories just like this. Because in aviation, sometimes the oldest giants create the biggest surprises.